an hour. Total payroll, $68,729,000. Okay, Matt, what about this?
Well, some people don't like the idea that the jobs stay here because the state government gives them these tax abatements. I think that's kind of a silly charge. That's just the way the game is played now at the state and local level. The states are competing to hold on to jobs.
I mean, look at Rick Perry in Texas.
That's right.
That's what he did all the time.
It's a smart way to do it. And look, if you juxtapose with what Obama, I love what they're saying about, oh, he'd have to have some 800 and some odd announcements to equal what Obama did. What Obama did yesterday is he put over 1 million jobs at risk by their failure to allow the EPA to modify these fuel economy standards when we did a 10-year window on fuel economy standards. What that decision alone did yesterday could put 1 million U.S. jobs at risk. And so the difference between the Obama administration and their environmental extremism and what Donald Trump is doing by showing a little Charlie hustle on saving some jobs is really important to the American people.
When you look at the chart, Julie, about manufacturing jobs and the trend, especially in the Rust Belt state, it is pretty stark. You know, the fall off in 2008, obviously, but it really does not come back.
It doesn't. And look, 1,000 jobs in Indiana for Carrier is great news for people who are keeping their jobs and for their families. Obviously, it is a small dent in this larger problem that we're seeing. But one thing I will say is that there is a theater to the presidency that is really important. It's part of the job, how you make people feel about what's happening as opposed to just the actual decisions themselves. And I think Trump understands that. He knows that 1,000 jobs don't fix this overall problem, aren't going to save other jobs in other states, but he knows it's important for him to be there promoting this. And I think you're going to see this from him a lot throughout his presidency.
Charles.
You know, I thought Josh Earnest was really looking somewhat pathetic, trying to pit his president against Trump. For all of what he said about Obama, Trump has done this while not even in office. So that's a big difference. But look, it was a theatrical stroke. He saved the jobs. He did something he said he would do. Yes, of course, it's a kind of a bribe. It's the state giving $7 million. But I think at a level it says something. Republicans and conservatives in general are going to have to understand that if they're going to deal with the inequities of trade, and trade overall is always a good thing, but that's overall. If they're going to deal with the losers, the people who lose their jobs and their status and everything, they're going to have to break some of the economic rules, some of the economic shibboleths that they've been hanging on to. And if that means state subsidies, if that means either a direct subsidy for the worker or for the factory, it's going to have to be done. That's the only way they're going to hold on to the working class who supported Trump, and it would be the right thing to do.
He's obviously also promising a different corporate environment with lower corporate taxes, regulations, as we just talked about, being stripped back. The blue-collar billionaire thing, this is a 15-year employee from Carrier.
You're not even the actual president of the United States yet. You're president-elect, but you've done more in your first 3 weeks of being elected than the last, the current administration has done in the last 9 months for us.
I mean, it resonates. I mean, whatever you think.
I would love to see Josh Earnest watch that clip. He'd be so angry watching that guy make that argument.
He would make the point that he has to go 804 more times.
Exactly. Look, I mean, this is good. It's a political win for Trump, and Julie's exactly right. When you're trying to sell a story that you're here to make America great again, that these jobs aren't leaving, you're the guy who's going to keep them here. This is a good part of that story for Donald Trump, and you're trying to sell that narrative. But this should cause people who are proponents of limited government some pause. You don't want the federal government, you don't want the White House, whether he's actual president or the president-elect, to be spending his time negotiating these kinds of deals all across the country. There are
You're rolling your eyes.
Wait, let me actually finish my point. The problem with this is what Charles calls shibboleths. Other people think of as verities. I mean, these are economic truths that have stood the test of time. This is what Adam Smith was arguing about, the benefits of trade. And when the President of the United States says, we will not allow companies to leave the country without consequences, if he has the power to do that, what else does he have the power to do?
Well, here's what President Obama had the power to do. He had the power to sit in the Oval Office and with a pen and a phone destroy jobs after jobs after jobs, manufacturing sector left and right, because of his environmental agenda, because of his new labor regulations. He did a lot of this outside Congress, and it's nice to see a president do the opposite.
The point is, conservatives have to accept the fact that you're going to have to sacrifice economic efficiency for equity. If you don't, you're going to lose the country. And in the end, it's worth it to create social peace. And that's what the model is here.
This battle will continue. A panel to come, I'm sure. More on a Christmas suspect apprehended. Stay tuned. Weekly Standard. Matt Schlapp, contributor with The Hill. Julie Pace, White House correspondent for the Associated Press. And syndicated columnist Charles Krauthammer. Okay, Steve, we'll get to the logistics of this statute. But what about Mattis and this potential choice?
Well, it's hard to imagine somebody who would be received more enthusiastically by the rank-and-file uniformed military than James Mattis. I mean, the Marines who served for him, served with him, love him. They speak highly of him. He's known as the warrior monk because he's done so much reading. Arguably, nobody in the U.S. military has done more reading than James Mattis has. He's got this famous letter that he wrote back in 2003, 2004 about the importance of reading before you head into battle. It went viral. It's been a big deal. I think that you described the potential obstacle of the exemption in the correct terms. It's not really an obstacle. If it's a hurdle, it's a 1-foot-high hurdle. John McCain has indicated that he's willing to do that. The Armed Services Committees, both in the House and the Senate, are looking at language that would do the exemption. I'm told they are not looking at it because they've been instructed to do so by the Trump campaign, but that everybody understands that this is, in effect, Donald Trump's choice.
Matt, one of the reasons I think, or we think, that maybe the transition is very quiet on all of this is because they love the story of the carrier story today,
sure,
which we're going to talk about in the next panel. But what does this choice say about President-elect Donald Trump in your mind?
Well, the transition needs to stop making so much progress, clearly, because they're stepping on really good news. Yeah, and they're making so much progress, fast progress, on picking these nominees. I do think it's interesting that you had Mike Flynn, who also needed a waiver to be nominated to be Secretary of Defense, who was forced out of the Obama administration. He, of course, is going in as National Security Advisor. Now you have another military man who will have to get a waiver, who was also forced out. Early retirement, they called it, with a little bit of a euphemism because of the Iran deal. And I think what it tells you about Donald Trump, the first thing is that, boy, any age is acceptable, right? There was always this thing about youthful vigor in these new administrations, and I think what we're seeing with Donald Trump is that he wants people with long and extensive experience to be part of his administration. I think that's.
We get the natural sound of the meeting there outside when he met with Mattis. Julie, I think this pick, Pompeo at CIA, if you are Iran, this is not a good moment for you.
I think if you're Iran, Donald Trump's presidency is not a good moment for you, and I think he's sending that signal with his picks. I also think it's really important for someone like Donald Trump, who, for all of his business skills and all of his connection that he's been able to make with voters, comes into the presidency without any significant international foreign policy experience. He's going to need people around him. Things happen when you're president around the world that you just can't predict, and he's going to need people who have experience on these issues, have experience making decisions quickly. Mattis is one of those people, and as Stephen said, I think he is going to be widely accepted, not just by the rank and file, but also lawmakers, I believe, from both parties on the Hill.
I want to turn to the Secretary of State quickly, Charles, and the list that we have now at 5. Mitt Romney, Rudy Giuliani, Senator Bob Corker, another general, David Petraeus, retired general, and John Bolton. There's some indication that Trump may be trying to get to Romney, but he's getting a lot of pushback inside people that have been loyal to him, Kellyanne Conway and Newt Gingrich.
We've never quite seen anything like this. Sort of the public back and forth, president deciding in a very open way through all kinds of theatrical moments like the dinner last night or the other night. I don't think there's any way to tell. This is going to be a very personal decision. I think Trump is looking to see if he can form a personal connection with Romney. But could I say just one thing about Matthew?
Oh, sure.
It's good to have a military man. It's also good to have a military man who's known as Mad Dog. Because let's say you're trying to send a message to obstreperous Iranians who've been harassing our boats. I think you want to send a message that says something like, if you don't stop within 48 hours, I may have to turn the matter over to Mad Dog, translated afterwards into Persian. I think that can be quite useful. Nixon used the crazy factor to great effect the Russians were always afraid that they could push a button and he would go over the top, is when he went to nuclear alert during the Arab-Israeli War of '73. So good to have a mad dog on your side, especially one with his strategic knowledge and range and tactical operational experience. That's very rare and would serve extremely usefully in the cabinet.
Steve?
Yeah, I mean, the thing about Mattis is that he's known and respected for so many reasons. One is that he's known as a mad dog. He's blunt. You know, when the Never-Trumpers were looking for somebody to recruit to be sort of an intellectual Donald Trump, they turned to James Mattis.
I mean, we did a piece about it. He considered it.
He thought about it and then eventually decided against it. But he also, you know, he has this intellectual side, but he also has this softer side. I mean, after he left the Marine Corps, he took this road trip across the country in which he stopped and visited as many Gold Star families, the Marines that he had commanded who were killed in battle fighting under him, to visit their families. A solo road trip across the country. You just don't hear about that very much. And he went to great lengths, it must be said, to have that not become a media story.
In the meantime, Matt, we're hearing that the president-elect is considering Joe Manchin, senator from West Virginia, for energy. A Democrat, coal country. What about that potential move?
I think it's great. We got a lot of Democrats who are looking at the map in 2018. Heidi Heitkamp is another name we're hearing.
She's meeting tomorrow.
Who are going to have rough sledding in their states, and Joe Manchin, I think, would fit perfectly on the questions of global climate change, you know, domestic energy exploration, and the environment generally. And I think he'd be a great pick. I was thinking about what Steve talked about with Mad Dog. We're reading a lot about the State Department. Maybe we'll have Lapdog over there with Mitt Romney. And I don't know what they'll call Joe Manchin, but I probably wouldn't call him anything.
What do you think is really behind the whole Newt Gingrich, Kellyanne Conway? Is they're given a leash and they can kind of express the base's frustration with Romney to get it out in the open? Or
the one thing we know about the kind of process that Donald Trump runs is that he wants his advisors to be voicing their opinions. He likes to see this play out, whether it's in private or whether it's in public, and he has sent this message. And Kellyanne Conway and Newt Gingrich firmly believe that of all of the things that we have seen from Donald Trump since the election, including softening on some of the positions, the thing that would anger his supporters the most is putting Mitt Romney in the cabinet, which is actually really amazing when you think about it. But they just think it would be such an affront to the people who look at him as someone who will really come here, shake up Washington, that would just be unacceptable.
John Bolton meets Trump Tower tomorrow, so we'll see where all that goes. Next up, President-elect